Hello all, my name is Will Scudder and my disease is syphilis. Syphilis was especially endemic to artists, and so I chose to kind of tell you about syphilis through their artwork. Syphilis gets its name from the poem by Jerome Fracastore. In his poem, the Greek god Syphilis contracts the disease, and the disease was believed to come from the New World. When Columbus and his crew went over, it was believed they had sexual encounters with the Native Americans there who had the disease. They then brought it back to Europe where it was previously unseen, and so it wreaked havoc on society. If you were a prostitute, a middle class worker, or an elite, you were susceptible to this disease, and so it just wreaked havoc on all levels of society. The reason it is much contested as to where syphilis came from, and the reason I believe the theory that it came from the New World is because the bacteria that causes it is very similar to yaws and beetle, which were both definitely found in Central America at the time. And so here's the face you make when you by accidentally bring a deadly disease back to your country. The cause of the disease was believed at the time to be astrological, as you can see in Al Richter's Syphilitic Man. So if you were an Aries, you will find love tonight. But Pisces, I'm sorry, I have some bad news today. But the actual cause was having sexual encounters with someone who had syphilis. Their body excrements would transfer the bacteria to you, and then you would contract the disease yourself. And here's that bacteria. It is Treponema pallidum. In microscopy, one can't help but imagine all the countless deaths this little sucker caused. Treponema pallidum is a bacteria that is gram-negative. It is a fastly replicating and fastly spreading spirochete, and in the end it is deadly if it goes untreated. Similar species as yaws and beetle, and you actually have to go to subspecies to differentiate them. Here we have A Harlot's Progress by William Hogarth. It follows a girl named Amal Hackabot as she becomes a prostitute, rises in life, and then falls and ultimately succumbs to syphilis. In the first engraving, you see that she's being recruited by this pimp woman. She has a syphilitic mark on her forehead. The syphilitic mark was covered by a black dot so that people wouldn't be freaked out by this oozing thing from these women. And so you see that in the photo, Moll starts off pure and clean, and then already, now that she's become a prostitute, you can see that she too has a syphilitic mark on her forehead. And by now she's starting to get more and more. She's practicing witchcraft. Her life is a mess. She's about to get arrested. She goes to jail, and eventually she does succumb to the disease, and you can see the doctors arguing over how to treat her because there were many medical beliefs on how to cure syphilis and even what syphilis was. And the best part about this is that at her funeral you can see they're drinking punch from her coffin, and no one really seems to care that she died. And it was because that syphilis was so endemic among prostitutes, and it was just believed they were low life, and no one really cared until the elites and other people started contracting this disease too. And so now it was time to find a cure. And if you look in the background of this engraving, you can see that a lot of her prostitute friends do have these black syphilitic marks on their forehead, showing how endemic it was among prostitutes. And so syphilis kind of progresses in a similar way. In the first stage, you're going to get this chancre, which is this red oval, and it's going to ooze this clear liquid. It's usually in the areas that uh, were in contact with, it's usually in the areas that contacted the person with the syphilis, so that's usually the genitals, the mouth, or the hands. Um, by the secondary stage, the bacteria has entered the bloodstream and it's spreading throughout your whole body. You'll develop a rash, usually where it's spreading. That's usually going to be found on the hands and the feet, and it'll just be these black dots that syphilis is famous for. The third stage is the latent stage. It's asymptomatic. About a third of the people who let syphilis go untreated will remain in the latent stage for the rest of their lives. Like I said, it's asymptomatic, so people aren't really worried about it. The final stage is actually tertiary syphilis. The bacteria starts to replicate. It becomes very deadly. It starts degrading your nervous system, your brain, your bone joints, your muscles. Everything just starts falling apart. And you can actually see this in this picture where it is a sculpture based on tertiary syphilis. The woman has lost her nose and her lips falling apart, and her skin looks awful. It's actually, these sculptures were actually a piece called La Pestilencia, and they were funded by the Board of Education. But when they saw how grotesque the final product was, they decided not to buy them. So if you're interested, contact zombiejesus11@gmail.com. But otherwise, it was and the sad part is this was based on a true case. You can see the woman here just has the late stages of syphilis, and it's unlikely that she lived much longer after this photo was taken. The disease is mostly spread in its secondary stage because it is in the bloodstream, and any excretions from the body, where it's blood, urine, anything, will have that bacteria in it and make it easily spread to others. An interesting point is in art in the 19th century, after this disease has really affected everyone. It's very common in Europe and other places. You see the rise of the femme fatale theme in artwork, and it shows that prostitutes were believed to just be this harbingers of doom and spreading this disease to everyone and causing the death of these different men. And here we see that a man is having to come to terms with the fact that he now has syphilis, and at the time it is very deadly. And so people believe that the disease came from the New World, so they also turned to America to find a cure. And one such cure was guyaco, which is a tree bark that comes from Central America. The bark would be crushed up, added to a liquid, and then ingested. And while it didn't do much for curing syphilis, it did slow down the disease a lot. And so at the time, it was the common popular way to treat a person with syphilis. Eventually, the Catholic monarchy got a stranglehold and a monopoly on guyaco, so people had to turn to other sources. One such source was arsenic and mercury. And so while those two compounds were effective in killing the bacteria, they were also very deadly to the patient. And so for a while, it was syphilis was just such a deadly disease. And finally, in 1943, they realized that penicillin was a cure to syphilis, as it is to many things. And so if you inject penicillin intramuscularly, you can kill the bacteria, stop it from spreading throughout your body, stop it from spreading to others. Unfortunately, the damage done by syphilis at that point is irreversible, and you can catch it again, so stay away from anyone who has syphilis still. And yeah. So current efforts are basically about preventing people from spreading it. You see On the left is a poster in a Canadian subway letting people know about syphilis. The top one is a poster during the Depression era that talks about this new cure. And an interesting thing about that is that during this time, as the cure was being discovered, there's an experiment going on where they recruited rural African American males, and they were testing them and like examining the development of syphilis as a disease. And even though they had found a cure for it, they didn't tell these patients, and so many of them developed into latent and tertiary syphilis. And the last two posters are showing about prevention, the different portals of entry, which is skin-to-skin contact, and having sex with anyone who does have syphilis. And so in the US in 2014, there were 20,000 cases reported, so this disease is anything but eradicated. And so remember, syphilis, it can affect you and maybe you too. So watch out. Thanks for watching my video, and I will see you Monday.